Well, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us a little bit later than our regular time of webinar. So pleased that you could be with us. I'm Marla DeVries. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Center for Innovation, and I'm excited to spend the next hour with you. Just a couple of housekeeping items you see on the slide. We'd love it if people would utilize the chat box and make some introductions, name and the organization that you represent. That helps us to create a bit of a community in our time together. Also want to encourage you to use that chat box as a way of commenting or interacting throughout the presentation. And then if you have a question, we will have time at the end for some Q&A. And you'll see that the blue arrow is pointing down to a place where you can post a question. And as I mentioned, we will get to those at the end of the session. So before I introduce our speaker, I want to start things off with a quick poll. So Janet, there she goes. All right. So on a scale from 1, which is the low end, to 10, the high end, how would you rate your ability to influence others and make positive change at your organization? So we'll give you a moment. Pick your number. All right. And survey says a mix. A few people that say they're on the low end, 1s and 2s, no 3s and 4s. That's interesting. And then, a smattering with, I would say, the majority of you in a above average of a 7 or 8. And 7% that say, I'm at a 10 in terms of being able to influence others and make change, which is great. And hopefully, regardless of the number that you picked, you'll pick up some good strategies today. I know for myself that a lot of ideas, and sometimes pitching them and being able to influence others, I've got some opportunity for growth. So I'm excited to hear from Bob and to hear from our panelists as well. So let me take a moment. I have known Bob Eames, and I think we determined it was about 30 years that we have known each other. And Bob has a rich history of supporting manufacturing organizations as well as academia. He has worked in management, marketing, business planning, business development. He's a professor at the Department of Business at Calvin College, and he is the founding director of the Calvin Center for Innovation in Business, which was started in 2010. And Bob is going to share with us tools and strategies for speaking up and sparking change. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob. I'll come back on a little later and introduce some additional panelists. So I'll turn it over to you, Bob.
All right. Thank you. Is my mic working?
You're good.
All right. My screen looks a little different than I'm used to because I switched to a Mac here. And I'm so glad to join you today and happy to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is big ideas and trying to turn insights into action and finding new ways to be more of a person of influence in your organization. So thanks for having me back. If you were in Grand Rapids last summer, we talked about the theme of growing bolder, and we talked about what boldness meant. It really, and the idea of being bold is kind of showing that ability to take risks and to be confident and courageous, and really the idea of courage is a critical element of both being innovative, but also affecting positive change in your organization. It just takes courage to even think different. And I'm sure most of you are too young to remember the famous ad campaign that Apple put out with all these great minds of history. And it didn't say think differently, it said think different. And it was a pretty powerful way to reframe, just reframing things, having those big ideas, whether it be the theory of relativity in the case of Einstein or some of those people. It's um, that courage and that ability to look at things and to see them in new ways and to think differently. And it takes courage to have crazy ideas and to just approach problems in different ways. So um, those ideas come from having insights, and insights that we have come from all kinds of crazy places. And I've actually spent a lot of time studying creativity and innovation. And, it turns out that there's no easy solution to how do I become more innovative or creative. It really is the result of asking a lot of questions, being what I like to call relentlessly curious about things, and looking at problems in and also needs in new and different ways. And so, how do we do that? Well, the challenge is, we're human. We're subject to all of the human foibles that we have, which is uh, seems to be increasing the older I get. Anyway, you can probably relate to it, but there's so many things competing for our attention, including that little electronic device that we've all got in our pockets or our purses that continually are vibrating or ringing or buzzing and trying to command our attention and take it away from something else. Um, so we've got to really learn how to pay better attention, to be in the moment. We've got to learn to discipline ourselves to be more focused. And then we also have to develop that capacity to reflect, to think about things that we've heard and think about things that we hope to accomplish in a positive, constructive way. So, how do we do this? Well, and I will ask, although the view I have on my screen, I'm not going to be able to see how many people raise their hands on this Zoom meeting, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have been through some kind of a workshop before, or some kind of a leadership training experience where they talked about active listening. So I'll ask you to go ahead and raise your hands, and I'll ask my good friend Marla to just tell me how many hands or positive responses she's getting.
I am seeing 19, 20, and counting.
All
So
right.
it's just going up, up, up.
Good, good. That's great news, right? So, active listening. The whole idea about active listening is usually something that we focus on when we're talking about two-way communication, when you're actually having a conversation with somebody. And in that case, you're commonly thinking about how do I ask clarifying questions? How do I kind of shut my mind down so rather than thinking about what I'm going to say, I concentrate more on what that person is saying and try to really hear them. How do I restate what they've said to make sure that I'm understanding them? And how do I be fully engaged, but yet very thoughtful and not interrupting, and be sensitive to the kinds of things that somebody's saying? Well, um, those are great when you're having a conversation. And for those of you that have been trained in active listening, you know that you're kind of fighting against yourself because again, we're kind of wired to not listen as well as we should, but to be thinking about what we're going to say in response to what somebody else is saying. It's a little bit different when you go to a conference or when you go to a seminar or when you're involved in even a webinar like this, because you don't have as much of that two-way conversation. You'd probably have a lot more two-way conversation if we were in the same room and you could raise your hand and slow me down or stop me and ask me a question. It seems that there are less questions per minute in online learning events than there are in person. But here, what we really have to do is concentrate and be disciplined in a very structured way to pay attention and to actively listen and to get the most out of what we're hearing. And so I want to share two possible ways that you can do this. And so these are all included in the high price you paid for this webinar, right? The two methods, and again, I'll ask for some hands because you're probably familiar across the board, both of you, with both of these methods. So raise some hands if you're familiar with either the Cornell method of taking notes and kind of summarizing things, or if you're familiar with mind mapping. And then I'll talk about them just briefly, and then we'll move on and get into what we do with these things.
So far, I'm seeing about 8 hands that went up. So
okay, all right. So the Cornell method, it sounds pretty sophisticated, doesn't it? I mean, we're taking, Cornell University. Actually, a professor of education there came up with this method. It's really simple. If you look at that page that's on the slide, it kind of looks a little bit like a lot of popular planners, right? No coincidence there, right? The idea is that the 70% of the page on the top is for taking notes. That's where you're writing down facts. So, if you were talking to me and you were really trying to kind of absorb what I'm saying, you'd be writing down things that I'm saying, probably more of the headlines and some of the bullet points in some of my slides. Those would be the facts. Then after you've written those down, you'd go back and you'd reflect on it a little bit and you'd write what questions come to mind for you or what key words jump out at you, right? So when I talked about active listening, what did I say? What are the facts that you'd have? And then what would those questions that came to your mind be and what were the key words? And then after the fact, this is what you do at the end of a session like this, or maybe even tonight. You'd spend some time and summarize what you learned, what was new to you, and maybe any follow-up questions. So that's basically the Cornell method. And it's a structured way to not just take notes, but to use those notes. And I wrestle with this because I do this sometimes. I really should do this in my everyday journaling, but I'll admit to you, I don't do it all the time. And I don't do it consistently. And I'd probably be a whole lot better off if I had. Mind mapping is something that I'm more likely to do because it's a more visual process. And again, with mind mapping, what you do is you basically take that whole central theme, topic, or idea. And so we're talking about today the next big idea, right? And how do we kind of discover and present the next big idea, right? And so out of that, what we've talked about so far is a number of different subtopics, things like paying attention, like active listening, like being focused, things like that. And so you might put some of those in orbit around that main topic. And then you might put some of those facts or ideas or questions that you have around that. If that's a more comfortable way of thinking for you, the whole goal of both of these is just to make you think about what you're hearing, but then don't stop there. Right? The next step is, what do I do with this stuff? So I got to process it. I got to review it. I got to reduce it to the insights or the important essence of this thing so that I can hopefully get some value out of it. It also helps you remember it better. So now paying attention and getting insights, right? Now we're talking about we've listened to somebody else's ideas. What we also have to do is really pay attention or stay focused on what our organization or what we're all about, right? What's our goal? What's our focus? What are the challenges and needs that we have? Because it's great if you go to a conference, or it's great if you go to a workshop or a seminar, and you get all these ideas. You're real excited about some interesting new things, but the fact of the matter is, it really doesn't pertain to the big issues that you've got to deal with day to day or even year to year. So at the same time, you want to shut down your brain from thinking too much about yourself and be open to those kind of new ideas or new insights. You don't want to lose sight of really the important things that your organization is all about. And this is where I think when you're doing your planning, when you're doing if you're keeping KPIs, things like that for your organization or your specific area, those are the things that always have to be with you, right? That's in many ways the kind of the North Star that we've got, because those are areas that we're always thinking about and focused on. But you got to make sure that you're thinking about what you're hearing and how does this relate to what I'm doing or what I've got to do. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So here's basically the idea is reflect on what you hear. You try to develop insights and possible action plans out of everything, right? And that only comes with learning how to listen well, how to pay attention well, how to stay focused, right? And always be thinking about so what, all right? This might be really cool, but so what? What do I do with it? Well, again, getting from insight to action. And if you saw our little session last summer, you saw something like this. And your goals and plans, they've got to be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time bound, the classic SMART goals, right? And then you take those insights, right? I had this insight, and you're going to hear some of our participants from last summer talking about their experience going back with some of the pitches that they shared at the conference. And it's, okay, how does that relate to something I'm doing back in my organization, right? And then you come up with that idea for action. And they came up with some really cool ones and had some really good experience. So I can't wait to hear more about that. The other thing is, don't forget about sort of things that don't work or on the surface seem like they won't work. That's where you really got to kind of challenge yourself to learn from the past, but not be bound by it. Don't let it become a stigma, something that becomes a blocker for you. You got to keep going, and even if what you've done is made just a little bit of progress towards kind of a more successful outcome, celebrate it, right? Okay, so now how do you pitch, right? And we had that full range from the original poll that we took, and the full range of folks. Some of you are tens, some of you are ones and twos, no threes or fours yet. But we're gonna get to a point where we've got more threes, fours, and hopefully more eights and nines, right? And the way you're going to do this is by practicing this at work, right? So again, pitches. When you're pitching your idea, I tell people this with some hesitation, but not a lot. I just like to say, what you're really doing is selling, right? When I was a young, kind of naive man in business school, I turned down a really great job with IBM because I didn't really want to be in sales. Well, guess what? I've been in sales my whole life. It just hasn't been called sales. It's been called marketing or teaching or development or research, but you're always selling yourself and you're selling your ideas. And the best way to do that is by learning how to do it concisely, by doing a pitch. And I suggest that your pitches should always be 30 to 45 seconds long, 75 to 100 words. It's got to be interesting. It's got to be personalized. And you've got to be able to deliver it with a great deal of confidence and assertiveness without being pushy or overly aggressive, right? So that's the basic idea of a pitch. Now, we talked about this method, so I'll go through it, not hopefully too quickly. If you've got questions, raise your hand, and Marla, you're going to have to yell because I can't see that whole screen. I'm flying on instruments here. But you have to establish the problem. And ideally, you establish the problem with a hook. And a hook is a way to draw people in to your point of view by saying, picture this, right? Once you say picture this, their mind shifts into being open to you painting a picture of a situation, right? That they'll then be processing, hopefully consistently with the way you have. Or have you ever noticed? And of course, you pick something that they have noticed. So right away, you're engaging them, you're hooking them. Or did you ever wish we could do this, right? Or did you know that? Boom. And don't use some trivial thing there, but something that'll be interesting and they won't argue with. And the goal is capture attention, draw the listener in, and you don't start sneaking in your solution or what you're trying to sell yet, okay? The next thing you do, once you've got them hooked on the problem, then you start giving them specifics about what you're trying to do to solve the problem, okay? And this is where you get into sort of those key insights that you have that have allowed you to come up with the solution that you have. So this is where you're kind of making your pitch. You're showing the solution to the problem, the Tylenol that's going to solve the headache that they've got. And then what some of those features are of the idea, right? Then you kind of jump to that next thing, which is you start stating the benefits, all right? Because people don't buy features and they don't buy solutions. What they do is they buy the benefits, right? So how will the solution that will come out of what you're proposing benefit the organization? Why is it desirable? Why is it better than the status quo? How does it help your organization achieve your goals? This is like really tying it into something that's going to be important to whoever you're pitching to. And then last but not least, you have to have a real clear call to action, right? And that clear call to action is, in sales terminology, this is where they say, don't forget to close. Don't forget to ask for the order, right? This is where you've presented a clear and compelling request for action. Like, let's try and do this today, right? Let's sit down and plan this out together and make it happen. Or if you want to be even edgier, and it was fun last summer listening to some people pitch this way, they say something like, so what do you say? Should we keep doing it the old way? Or should we try this? And it's like, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So you're kind of putting it out there with a little bit of an edge if you're really courageous and bold. Okay. So the goal is to get to basically that 45-second pitch. And we don't really have time to do that today, but this is a pretty straightforward approach. I think what we want to do is shift to now talking to our panelists. So first, I guess I'll ask, are there any questions on anything I've said so far?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now.
Okay.
I'll just add a couple of my comments, and then I want to do one more poll, and then we'll bring in the panelists. So, what I heard you say, and certainly when you talk about active listening, that's a big part of our model and our approach. But what I heard you say is we're not always the best at listening, and that's something that we have to focus on, and filtering out so many, especially at a conference or even on a webinar, to be able to filter out so many ideas and to keep in mind, how is this relevant to our own organization and what we might be able to do, and the so what. And I
Yep.
think this is timely because spring is often a time when conference season picks up. And if you're not going to conferences, you likely are going to webinars. So I think it really helps us to be able to focus on how do we make the most of it, and whether we use the mind mapping or the Cornell model, that we're really honing in on how do we go from being infused with so many ideas and be able to take action.
Yeah.
And some of us, people have heard of working genius before. There are different genius types, and one of them is galvanizing, which is what you're saying. Galvanizers are naturally able to make great pitches. I am not a natural galvanizer. So I think what you're teaching us are some very practical ways to be able to make that pitch in a succinct way to be able to take action. So if you can, Janet, launch the next poll, which talks about specifically about having gone to a conference. All right. How often have you been able to implement significant changes after attending a conference? Give people a moment. Getting there. Great. So it looks like a lot of us are in the occasionally um, range. Nobody's in the always, but we've got kind of a mix there. So there's some opportunity for growth. And when we had our conference, I shared the statistic that I don't know where I heard it, but that only about 2% of us actually go back and make substantive changes. So the pitch idea that we used at our conference was you showing us the pitch process. We had a workbook that people throughout the conference worked through to be able to take those notes and then synthesize it together to make a pitch. So we had 8 topic areas. And Bob, I think the next slide maybe shows those topic areas. So people were able to select the topic area. This is for those of you that weren't there. Were able to select a topic area. They were in a small group of about 8 people, and they had to write a pitch. So they had about 5 minutes, not a lot of time, write a pitch, 45-second pitch. They pitched it to their group. Then the group voted, and the winner of that group then met with the other 2 dementia care groups, for example, and made their pitches to a bigger audience. And the winner of those pitches went to, I don't know if we call it pitch off, but there was a bit of a competition, and we had an applause meter, and we had 8 people presenting on their different pitch ideas. And so I am happy. I think, yeah, there might be, oh, we don't have those pictures. We have the pictures of our lovely guests. So I'm going to invite Hannah Little, Michelle Boyd, and Tassine Gill to come on screen and unmute themselves. And let's have a conversation. And I'm going to turn it back over to Bob to have a conversation about what happened when they went back to make their pitch. So, welcome, ladies.
Hello.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Well,
Bob, maybe so we can have these ladies front and center, maybe stop sharing the screen for now.
all right, let's do that. All right. Did we stop sharing now?
Yep, we're good.
All right. Now let me see. Here we go. All right. I can see you again too. That's cool. All right. So I guess I'll throw this out to all of you. Did participating in and being a winner, I mean, you guys won big in the pitch session. in 2024. Did that have an impact on you and your organization and on the way you kind of behaved when you got back?
For sure. Yeah.
Yes.
I think for me, it just provided a framework for pitching ideas and reminded all of us from my team who were at the conference the importance of specific calls to action, which really help when you go back home.
Good, good. So the specificity and just again, maybe it gave you a little more confidence and some good reminders, right? So that's great. I mean, just the fact that you're willing to pitch more ideas now is a great thing. Hannah, how about you?
Yeah, similarly, it was great to have that sort of formula to create a pitch and I just felt more confident having concrete steps to take in order to help others take concrete steps. So I felt really excited to bring all these ideas back to my community and I felt confident in the way I could pitch them and share them with the powers that be.
Awesome, awesome. That's great. I'm so happy that it was helpful. And the one thing I'd always say too is when you do pitch, especially when you're pitching to kind of the powers that be, if you will, or even your colleagues, um, they're usually incredibly excited about it because somebody's coming to solutions rather than problems, right? So hopefully, the more you do it, the more courageous you get. Um, okay. And let's see, we got one other scene. Is that right?
Tazeen, yes, that's right.
Yeah. Am I pronouncing that right?
Perfect.
Okay. Awesome. Well, how about you?
I would probably echo the same. And like Marla was saying, I've done that a genius test as well. And galvanizing is actually one of my least proficiency. So I definitely gleaned a lot from your wisdom. And I felt like it gave me a mindset, like your fast failing concept helped me a lot to build some courage there. And then also a roadmap of like how you take them into the journey to imagine with you and a place of like landing to actually have a call to action. So I learned a lot from your session.
Good. Good. Well, I appreciate that. Nothing makes me feel better than to find a few people.
Bob,
Yeah.
I think you're having a mic issue. I think it's rubbing up against something, but we're getting a little static.
Is that better now?
It's better now. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Well, I hope I'm not going to do any more static. So, did you? The one question I would ask of all three of you is: did you pitch the specific idea that you had at the conference that won you all the acclaim? I see some heads nodding if I'm peeking under the bar here. So,
Yes.
there we go. Good. Okay. So, and you all followed the process, and you told us a little bit about the results. How are you kind of improving your pitching going forward? What kinds of things are you doing?
I think just for the pitch that we gave on the dementia care at the conference, I was lucky enough, a lot of our leadership was actually at the conference. So I didn't really have to repitch the same idea back to leadership. However, when we got back home, we kind of realized we have buy-in at the leadership level, and it's going to be part of our strategic plan moving forward for this year. But we have some groundwork to do to get buy-in from other stakeholders. So it was maybe a little bit overwhelming to think, how are we going to actually get this done? But using the action plan and thinking what's immediate steps we can take, what's a 3-month or 6-month goal, just to break it down a bit, because our pitch was around unlocking a certain area of our memory care unit and opening it up. And that actually involves a lot of buy-in from families and other staff members who would be impacted and other residents who live in the building. So just kind of slowing down and looking at what are concrete next steps, and we can do immediate things right away, providing education and starting to lay the groundwork before we actually implement our full pitch. We can start with baby steps.
Yeah, Yeah, good for you. I mean, that's how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. It's good for you. Anybody else?
So I brought it back to my immediate supervisor. And similarly, we also need a little bit more buy-in. I think part of where I kind of ran into a roadblock was so I wanted to pitch, or I did pitch implementing interdisciplinary huddles for the team, just so that we can sort of streamline communication, be on the same page, and have more Shabazim voice, because that's something that we tend to miss. Like when we're in our risk meeting, we don't have those sort of frontline folks. And so um, we have some excitement from a couple of Shabazim who came to the conference as well. Um, and then the kind of getting everyone else excited about it and actually empowering the teams to follow through has been a little challenging. I'm trying to sort of like figure out where my role is in that, because I don't have the direct power to kind of make it happen, and I also don't think it should come from me. I think it should come from the Shabazim, since they are, that self-directed work team. So that's sort of where we're at now. But I did also pitch another program as part of coming back. I learned about the Stronger Memory program out of Goodwin Living, and I have been able to implement that. And we're about halfway through our first 12-week session with a group. So that's been going very well. So I have kind of that confidence, and I'm sort of just finding, where are the areas that I can make those smaller, faster changes, and then continuing to follow up and nudge the other folks who, I sort of am relying on to help with the follow through.
Yeah. Well, that's the exciting thing is baby steps, right? Little bits of progress start to snowball. But it's not unusual for change makers to experience what you're experiencing. It's kind of like sometimes it's one step forward and two steps back, right? And I guess my encouragement to you would be if you don't think you have the authority, or if you don't think you have the power, you don't. But if you think you've got the power, you actually do, because you've already influenced things, right? So sometimes it's just a process of, okay, how do I get the organization aligned around what I'm pitching, right? Um, but don't do it in a spirit of fear, right? Do it in a spirit of, how do we make this happen? Or I need your help, right? Because you know who's got power and who, the stigmas in the organization. You know who they are, and a lot of them are actually going to be a lot more receptive to new ideas and to pitches than you might think. And sometimes you got to go one on one with them and just say, "Hey, I need your help with this. How does this? Are you behind this? What would have to be true for it to be something you'd fully support and move forward?" And um, it's amazing how far you can get. Again, there's more people out there than there are good ideas. So when you've got good ideas and have the conviction to push them forward, good things happen. Tassine, I wanted to switch to you for a minute, and then we can throw it open to other questions. I think, should I share this slide? I've got a really cool slide.
I think Janet beat you to it, Bob. So
Oh, okay.
there.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
All
to
right,
see what
there it
it got
is.
good.
Yeah, yeah. Tell
Share
us
what
about
your
this.
pitch
This was,
was for
I'm
those
so excited.
that don't know.
So this was the robot that I saw at the conference, and I remember that during the technology phase when we were pitching an idea, I pitched the idea of like what would it be like if we could use this robot to fulfill a dying wish for a resident.
Yeah.
And so when I went back to work, I actually realized that in order for this idea to work, there needed to be a bigger picture idea that needed to be pitched. And that's where your fail fast kind of concept really helped me and gave me the courage. So I kind of was like, the way I was seeing it was like there was like three different groups that I needed to pitch the idea to. One were the decision makers. So I pitched the idea to the president and kept it short and kept it in that mode of like imagining. And I know that for her, it was the bigger picture was what the Shepherd Village would look like. So the pitch was we wanted it to be the cutting edge place to, of how we can harness technology for the elder care. And so that pitched surprisingly, like, sometimes you pitch and you don't think that it's going to go anywhere, and then you're surprised. And so that's what happened in that case. And once I got the go ahead from her, we moved to the second group, which was the technology makers. So contacted Vesna and Mark Hudson and Simon Strauss were just super amazing. So that was probably the easiest pitch to make to, because I think one of the barriers that came along was funding. And if we don't envision, then the problem is like the funding's never going to come. So it has to start somewhere. And as you were talking about baby steps, so it was easy to kind of pitch to the technology makers because they were willing to understand that concept really well. And so they gave us a 4-week trial. And so that went really well. But then there was also the ground zero. And those are the different departments that needed to be also excited about this. And so that was like one conversation at a time with different departments and people. And yeah, and so they got all excited too. And it was really, really great because this robot just came on Thursday, and Friday we all unboxed it together.
That's cool. That is really cool. I mean, I am so excited about all three of your kind of pitches and the things that you've learned and the things you did. But whoever would have thought that we'd be looking at pictures of a little robot that you sold? I think that's fun. That is very cool. I'm so pleased and proud of all of you. Should we throw this open to questions from the bigger group, Marla?
I'm monitoring the Q&A. There's one question that is bigger, but I'll encourage people to go ahead and chime in either in the chat or the Q&A if you have other questions. I'm going to start off. So, Tazeen, I'm a sucker for a good visual. So I saw the light bulb and the little note. So was that for your kind of ground zero people, or how did you use that as a tool?
Marla, great question. So when I pitched the idea to the president, it was very simple and short, and I didn't realize that it would actually land into her asking me to have a meeting with two other directors, and it was supposed to be an hour-long meeting, and I was thinking, oh, great, now what I do? And so I needed to create an action plan and a business plan to actually propose, because what I was asking for is, what if we start a research and innovation department that kind of understands the need of healthcare and also explores the technology that's out there and kind of mix and match that. And so the light bulb was just something I thought because it is a brand new innovation idea, and we are lighting up the seniors world. So that's where I thought visual would probably speak louder than just words. And so I had it presented on each one of them at their table, and that just opened up our conversation easily to move into what it was. Yeah.
Awesome. So there is a request, and this, I don't know if this might put you all on the spot, but to see, you've kind of gone through your pitch, and as I recall at the conference, it was, I might even have the note, it was like, so can we make someone's day and like let this elder see Paris or something? But Michelle and Hannah, I think it would be great. People want to hear your pitch. So I don't know if you have it or could summarize it, but I think, oh, Michelle's ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, I say go for it.
Okay. So my pitch was on dementia care, and it was looking at our specific home here at Christie Gardens, where we have a separated memory care area from a more independent living area. So my pitch was, have you ever thought of our memory care unit as a prison where residents are forcibly confined? I have. I propose we remove the locks on our door between independent living and memory care, enabling residents to move freely. Research has shown this simple action can reduce resident stress and reduce psychotropic drug use, promote inclusion, and resident and staff well-being. Will you commit to advancing inclusion in our home by meeting with me next week to get these locks off our doors before the end of the year? We didn't get them off by the end of the year, but we did meet, which was good.
That's a pretty bold pitch. I like that.
It was, yeah. I like a little shock value, but we could all picture it because we did the pre-conference with Al Power, and he used some strong images in his presentations as well and really painted that picture of incarceration in relation to dementia and memory care units. So we definitely were inspired by that in our team's pitch.
And I just want to say two things. One is that pitch was created in a very short amount of time in a rather chaotic place. And so that's very impressive. And the second thing is, for those of you in the audience who speak at conferences or are on webinars, be thinking about what's actionable that people can take and do, and how are you inspiring and how are you helping? Because I know Al would be thrilled to hear, people made pitches based on what they heard in my session, because that's what we want to be able to support action. So I think that's awesome. Hannah, it looked like you were finding yours as well. Do you have yours? Do you feel?
I do.
All right, here we go.
I didn't know. I don't have time. Stay in your lane. Our house teams and CS teams are often not on the same page or in the same room when house planning and problem solving occurs. We try to relay messages, but it's messy and often people claim to be out of the loop, and the elders suffer. I propose we instate weekly interdisciplinary huddles for each house where house operations, elder support, and other challenges can be discussed with everyone, including the elders. This will minimize the number of steps for communication, involve all voices equally, and contribute to stronger team culture across disciplines and roles. This will ultimately improve the quality of lives for our elders. So let's commit by meeting next week to discuss the how of implementing huddles in the homes.
Professor Bob, any comments?
I love it. I mean, if it's any consolation, that idea of silos, the disciplines, the different functions or departments or whatever that you're trying to get together are they're so pervasive, and getting people together to start talking with each other about that common goal of just providing excellent care and getting things done it's amazing how organizations and those silos can get in the way. So I really like that. I think it was a very clear pitch. And again, as Marla said, for those of you that weren't there, it was fun. I mean, I love those kind of chaotic environments, the way we did at that conference. And I saw somebody made a comment earlier about, so how does this relate to the big idea, right? The way it relates to the big idea is these are three big ideas right here, right? And that's the big idea isn't something that somebody else can really tell you. It's something that you've got to kind of discover. And that's that idea of listening to the things you hear at a conference, or listening to these pitches and thinking about how does that relate to you and your organization and the challenges and the opportunities you've got. And the big idea, it's not a lightning bolt. It's not a, aha moment necessarily. It happens like that sometimes. More likely, it's what's that little thing we can do to start moving closer to kind of a better future, right? And those are the big ideas. So we're really not talking about the big idea per se. We're talking about how do you get to the big idea? So,
I think almost all of you shared a bit a recognition that the stakeholders, there's different groups. You identified to seeing three different ones, but it's like, okay, this is not likely going to be one pitch and the heavens open. It takes a series of steps. And so there's a question that who's the toughest decision or user group to convince, or which pitch group required the most advanced preparation on your part? So I open that up to any of you. When you think about the different stakeholders, which group required the most preparation or was the kind of toughest sell, so to speak?
I know in our setting, we haven't got there yet because we anticipate one of the tougher stakeholder groups in terms of risk would be families who moved their resident into our memory care area because it is a secure environment. So just doing the research and groundwork to be able to provide them what things will look like if we do open the door and have the research and evidence on the other interventions we'll have to keep their family members safe. We want to make sure we don't have the pitch without the backup of how their loved one will still be safe.
I think for me, like as I was doing the pitches and trying to listen to how it was being perceived, I noticed it's just everybody was coming from their own how that would happen. And I think from the president's point, like they are visionaries. So especially the president we have for Shepherd Village is incredible visionary. So it wasn't hard to kind of have that buy-in for her to imagine that as well. But of course, the practical, situations come in like where's the funding going to come? How is it going to start? What is it going to take? So the questions were different. Whereas when I was, trying to pitch that to the lead of the department leads, the questions were like day to day. How is that going to work practically? And that's when the questions come in. Well, how are the families are going to react? How are the residents going to interact? So the questions were different, and so that's what I would say.
Yeah. Hannah, how about for you? Anything you noticed with the different stakeholders and getting buy-in?
Yeah, I sort of touched on it earlier, but the Shabazim, our care partners are the toughest sell because they already have so much, that they're doing, and it's hard to sort of bring them in and share with them like the why and sort of the bigger vision of like what we hope to get out of this, because they tend to just sort of immediately go like, I can't do one more thing. But on the other hand, like they also complain that they're not part of these conversations. So and that's tough. And I think another thing that I've noticed is that we'll get people who are excited about it, but then who don't want to kind of get their teammates excited and sort of and put in that extra work. So um, I just want to continue being that cheerleader and sort of help coach them as a leader, so that they can kind of step up into those roles, because it is tough. And I get it though, because they are rock stars who do so much. And so hopefully we'll find a way in, and we'll find those sort of champions who can help us get everyone else excited as well. Because also coming from like a member of the clinical support team, it's harder for me to get people to buy in than it is for another Shabazz. So that's something that I notice.
So Bob,
Yep.
as again, Professor Bob, who has this marketing and sales experience, I hear there's a bit of the WIFM, right? The what's in it for me, tailoring the message. Is there anything in terms of like the science or research behind pitching or marketing that says, yes, you need to customize the message, or just anything you would add?
Sure. So two things came to mind when Hannah was talking, especially, that idea of you do have to tailor the message somewhat. And by the way, selling skills are really important to have. And sometimes one of the biggest selling skills is overcoming objections, right? And the objection about somebody being too busy, right? There's an old saying that I hope you won't mind me using it, but there's a lot of people that spend a long time living in hell because they know all the street names, right? And what it's saying is change is scary, right? I'm pretty comfortable managing all these things I'm doing right now. But if you look at the possible upside of having these interdisciplinary meetings. The interdisciplinary meetings, the goal of those is to improve communication and to actually find ways to work more efficiently and more effectively. So let's say you took one way to call somebody out on that, if you're, bold enough to do it, is to say, tell you what, let's do this as an experiment. Let's try having these meetings for 6 months, right? And we're only going to do them like for this much time. And the goal is to improve communication and reduce kind of the problems, the mistakes, the hurt feelings, the rework that's involved when you've got miscommunication or people feeling out of the loop, right? So if you could somehow turn the calculus of that person into not, this is one more thing, but how is this one more thing going to help me be more effective and more efficient at the 98 things I've already got on my plate, right? Because that's really the benefit for them. So again, overcoming objections in a professional selling situation is trying to find out in the objection what the real need is that they have that you haven't communicated the benefit for.
That pain point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be mindful of time. I want to thank Bob, certainly for sharing his wisdom and experience, and for each of you who have inspired us to continue to make pitches. And we can't wait to hear how the robot works out and how things go at Christie Gardens and at St. Elizabeth as you move forward with these pitches and others. I'm going to turn it over to Susan Ryan, who, if you weren't at the conference last year and weren't part of our closing session, we are having Bob back, and we're going to have just the same amount of chaotic fun building on this idea. But Susan's going to share a little bit more about what's to come for the next conference. Thanks, Susan.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me give my thanks as well to all of you. This was just fascinating. And I heard the pitches live at the conference, and now to have you back and to let us know what you've done with it is even more compelling and very exciting. So hats off to all of you. It's a very exciting journey, and we will remain in touch to see kind of where you go. But to all of you who are on the call today, the webinar, and you were not at last year's conference, you will want to mark your calendar for this year's conference, because we are going to mobilize the movement. That is our theme, and we want to see you in St. Louis. On the next slide, we'll go there quickly, and I'll go through these very, very fast. We've got a lot of pre-conference sessions. One of them, Marla's on the call, that middle one, coaching boot camp for leadership and managers. It's really all about what leaders will do to really create that culture that really just equips leaders and managers with coaching skills to have that type of culture. We'll do another Tech Innovation Summit as we did last year. The general sessions, well, since we're here, we'll harness the past, we'll seize the present, and we will fuel the future. And the slide there, that's another pre-conference session where we're going to take advantage of the St. Louis Accord, which was a Pioneer Network signature event in 2005, in which different stakeholder groups came together to really catalyze culture change coalitions, to really get CMS and ombudsman and all these different folks around the country to come together and said, we've got to do better and we will do better. Seize the present. There are many activities and things going on that we can embrace, we can grab hold of to really then create the work plans in the afternoon. It's a day-long session, and we're going to hope to fuel the future and mobilize the movement. On the next slide, I can't say enough about the keynote speaker that we are going to have for this year's conference. Bob Chapman has written a book called Everybody Matters. I've read that book twice now. I've listened to so many podcasts. I've talked to his team at Harry Waymiller, the company that he leads. It's a St. Louis-based organization. But he really, what he, to me, has inspired me so much is how he prioritizes the people that are within his organization and how he truly embraces our shared humanity and really, truly human leadership. That's the keynote. We have impact intensives, little TED Talks that we will be doing, as well as many other sessions. Last but not least, on the final day, we will have a small house summit. And we were doing site visits. We've got 2 small house communities. One is a greenhouse. One is a small house memory care, small houses. And then we've got a traditional institution that was renovated into households of 24. So it's a really exciting final day summit for all those that have the opportunity to stay and partake of that. So I hope we will meet you in St. Louis. I hope that you will be a part of this. And that pitch that Marla has referenced, that it will be back. Bob will be back. And we hope all of you will join us there. And last but not least, I just want to invite you to take part in the survey that Janet will be sending out at the conclusion of our webinar today. But thanks once again to our panel. Bob, it's good to see you again. Can't wait to see you again in St. Louis. And to all of you on the call, we'll meet you in St. Louis. So take care, everybody. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.